Hi, greetings, it's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and this is just another video, but a very important video, on communication skills and more specifically, delivering public presentations or giving a speech. This one is about the delivery of the speech. And there's quite a few things that you probably know, but I want to review, and hopefully you'll get some new things out of this video after you've watched it. We're going to talk about effective delivery, delivery types, including reading from a manuscript, memorization, impromptu, extemporaneous, nature of nonverbals. And essentially, I'm going to tell you that nonverbals communicate something even when you're not saying something vocally. Nonverbals are bound to the situation. Nonverbals are always believed, or generally always believed. Nonverbals are seldomly isolated, and nonverbals affect our relationships. We also have to recognize that we have control of our bodies. And when we are communicating through our bodies, we call it kinesics. And that includes unconscious nonverbal communication, types of body actions, and then standards of body actions. We're going to talk a little bit about voice and articulation, or what we call paralanguage. Voice and personality, variable characteristics of the voice, articulation control, pronunciation, related nonverbals, object language, clothes and things, space, distance, or what we call proxemics, and then time, what we call chronemics. So let's get right into talking about effective delivery. The types and ways of affecting a delivery of a speech are things that you really have to consider. The nonverbal signals, especially bodily action and voice that accompany each message, are more likely to be believed when you include the nonverbal behavior that's conflicting. So we always need to make sure that the words that we're saying in our body language is working in unison. So nonverbal characteristics, generally speaking, should be pleasant. We need to be paced properly and moving, flowing through our delivery in an effective way. We need to be alert of our own body language and mind. We need to be making sure that we're indicating enthusiasm. We have to be controlled enough, yet flexible enough, where our body activity reinforces the meaning. Eye contact is one of the most important things that we need to consider. So make sure that you are giving a positive eye contact with everybody that's in the room. And make sure that as you are speaking that you appear clear, pleasant, conversational, and make sure that you're articulating words properly. So let's talk more about nonverbal characteristics, specifically about unpleasant body language. So be aware if your body is stiff. Make sure that you are not rigid and that you truly are looking at the audience. Be very clear when you are nervous or fidgeting. Sometimes that will show, and that will make other people nervous and take away from your message. Don't be monotonous. Don't be stiff in reading, and make sure whenever you're delivering a message that you're reading out of a manuscript that it feels natural. So be very clear in your voice, not overly loud, not weak. Make sure that your voice is not monotonous either. Don't mumble. And make sure that when you are pronouncing words, that you're very careful on pronouncing them properly and making sure that you're using them proper. So proper usage of words truly does matter if you want to have credibility. So let's talk about some verbal habits that adversely affect perceptions of authority and sociability. So sometimes we use words such as sort of or kind of. That kind of discounts you in what you do, and I just used it. So be very clear on your hesitations. How often are you saying or and make sure you're doing things that really make sense. Don't use fillers like, oh well, or you know. And then make sure you're very clear on intensifiers, such as quite, really, or very. And then, of course, be aware of pseudo-humility. So you need to be very, very natural in your speaking style. And when you're natural, other people are going to feel more comfortable with you. So I call that speaking authentically. So very much, very often we will use a manuscript when we're reading. And when I'm doing public presentations, I sometimes like to have little scripts of things that I read to the audience, and then I'll say, hey, I want to read something from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Or here is a short story that I found in XYZ magazine that I'd like to share with you. And so that has its own value. Make sure that when you are reading that you're still giving eye contact on a regular basis. Make sure that people are listening, and make sure that your vocal variety or have inflections in the right place. So don't hide behind a manuscript. Still include your audience and make them feel like this is kind of a spontaneous situation that's more natural. When you are reading, stick with shorter sentences when possible. Use illustrations and analogies, compare and contrast things. Make sure that you are direct about when you're speaking about things, because you've got a document that helps give some authority. Make sure that as I mentioned before, your eye contact and your flow makes sense. Sometimes there are going to be things that can be distracting, like fans or low lighting, how you hold the manuscript, or if it's on some kind of platform, we need to be aware of that. Make sure that you're doing some memorization as you're going along. That helps keep things moving effectively. So memorization is really important. When you are memorizing some things, it helps give you some eye contact along the way. And when you have a document in front of you, it helps you know where to look in the document to help make sure that your speech continues to go smoothly. You'll often have impromptu delivery of presentations, things that happen in the spur of the moment, and you won't have any advance notice for it. So when this happens, draw from your own personal knowledge and experiences as much as possible. Sometimes, if you're in a situation where you know you're an expert about something, or you're in a situation that's involved with something that you have done that you might be called upon, you might just be anticipate that you could be called on that, and then kind of prepare something in your mind just in case. Try to be brief. Summarize things as you finish things up when you're doing impromptu delivery. And don't ramble on. Quit while you're ahead if you possibly can. If you really don't have anything to say, don't speak. Minimize what it is that you have to say, but respect other people's time, I guess, is where I'm coming from. So really be clear on who your audience is as you give any kind of extemporaneous delivery. Make sure that you are using the correct wording and you're being as adaptive as possible. Be aware of the subject matter as much as possible, and think about how can you connect your audience with the information that they would be most interested in and benefit from. Be flexible and adaptable as much as possible, and then be brief. If you can, create an outline if you can with the little time that you may have. Be aware of the nonverbals. We are always communicating whether or not we're speaking. And so some of the things that we need to be considering is that our nonverbals really are more believable than our words. People are watching your body language to see if what you're saying looks and feels honest. Generally speaking, there's a lot of things associated with nonverbals. So people shouldn't be suspicious about you. They should feel like you're being authentic with them. You need to make sure that you're doing things where your nonverbals are supportive of your verbal language that you're using. So some of the things that we get in real life from our nonverbals is about whether or not people are liking us or if they're attracted to us. You can tell how they feel about the power relationships that are involved. We can see whether or not they're receiving our message or not. We need to have empathy in our nonverbals and make sure that we're showing genuine concern when that's appropriate. So our emotions are always being conveyed in our body language, and we need to make sure that we're using the right body language for the emotions that we're trying to communicate. So sometimes our bodies do things with pent-up emotions and energy, and we need to be meaningful in our actions and body language and be the controllers of our own bodies. So give a good first general impression. Make sure that you are dressing appropriately for the position. Make sure as much as you possibly can that the lighting is right and that the platform is right. Is there a podium? Make sure that your posture is good, that you are distributing your body weight in a comfortable way and a poised way. Make sure that you may do a little bit of walking if that helps keep people's attention and helps you serve the audience a little bit better. Facial expressions are universal, and there have been studies on this. And so some universal facial expressions include happiness, sadness, surprise, fear, anger, and disgust. And so we need to make sure that we're watching the body language of other people as we're speaking, and that we're giving the proper body language that helps get the best results. How we position our muscles matter throughout our whole body, in our face and our arms and the rest of our body. So avoid unintentional, inappropriate facial stereotypes. Make eye contact with the audience. Be free and natural and spontaneous in your expressions so that they help strengthen your message. Make sure you're using the right hand gestures. Help reinforce the communication through emphasis. That these are things that we call emblems. Use descriptive gestures that we call illustrators. Make sure that your body language is consistent with your message. So a lot of things that you have to consider. So you have to remember coordinating your physical and your verbal messages. And sometimes that takes a lot of practice, and we have to think about, am I giving the appropriate body language for the message that I'm trying to convey? And the condition of how I speak also matters. When you are speaking to people of other cultures, make sure that you are showing people the proper respect. If it comes to mind when you're meeting someone in a higher social status than you, you might want to bow to other people if that's part of the custom of the people that you are speaking to. So again, tone, pitch, inflection, all these things matter. Make sure that you are very clear on the message that you're trying to give, and make sure that you're expressing it. You're articulating the words properly, and how you say it with the pitch and tone really matters, as well as volume. The speed of your voice matters. Generally speaking, more than 185 words per minute is considered too rapid for a normal speaking situation. Less than 40 words really is considered too slow. Make sure you're separating your words properly. You're articulating words. I know sometimes I get tongue-tied and I mispronounce words or I leave words out. So the more practice that you do it, the more effective that you can be. Use pauses in the appropriate way. And sometimes you might have something called a pregnant pause, which could take away from your message. So flow truly matters. Loudness of how you say things with volume and pitch matters. Make sure that you're paying attention to how the audience is receiving you. Does it look like they're trying to listen? Does it look like they're capturing every word that you're saying? So try to be as natural as possible. And consider your moods and how you affect moods with what you're saying. Make sure that you are opening your mouth wide enough in order to articulate the words properly. Don't slur. Make sure that you're projecting the words properly because you're moving your mouth to the right level. Make sure that you're aware of whether or not you're too tense. So avoid slack lips. This is where you have lips so loose that they do not adequately shape the mouth opening for proper vowel production or proper articulation of lip consonants. So one of the things that I learned from my acting friends is that they do something red leather, yellow leather, red, yellow leather. And this kind of helps loosen you up and it gets your mind connecting with your lips a little bit more. Sometimes I'm guilty of it and you should be aware of it. Are you speaking in a muffled mouth voice? So make sure that your tongue is moving at the appropriate speed to be able to articulate the words properly. And of course, along with that, pronunciation of words is absolutely important. Make sure you've got the accents in the right way according to accepted standards. And so different languages have different accents that are in there, and so does your language. If it's English, it also has words that need to be accentuated the right way. Be aware of your clothing, how you dress, the jewelry that you wear, or any tattoos. Is it appropriate for the situation? Make sure you're considerate of the culture, beliefs, and attitudes of the members in your audience. Be aware of any kinds of stereotypes that you may be fitting into by the way that you address or the way that you present yourself. Be aware of proxemics, that's the space and distance of your audience. And then, of course, be aware of time, or what we call chronemics. And so monochronemic is linear time occurring chronologically, and then polychronic is time occurring simultaneously. So let's summarize things up. When you are doing speeches, you need to make sure that you're aware of the pace, that you're moving through the content in the appropriate way, that you're maintaining eye contact with your audience, and that you are clear, pleasant, and well articulated with your voice. There are 4 principal ways of delivering a speech: reading from a manuscript, memorization, impromptu delivery, and then speaking extemporaneously. Be aware of your nonverbals. They happen unconsciously and consciously. So make sure that they are in alignment with what it is that you're saying, and remember that they are always communicating something. They should be bound to the situation. They should be believed. They affect our relationships. So be always aware of how your body language and your nonverbals are affecting your presentation, how you say things, right? The 3 things that you should be aware of is nonverbals help you understand whether or not you are being liked, if people are attracted to you, how you are showing respect in power relationships, and the responsiveness of your message. Make sure that as you are presenting, that you are speaking in a way where you are showing empathy to your audience, that you're making sure that if you are walking or even standing, that your posture is proper, that your facial expressions and your hand gestures help support your message, reinforce your message with gestures, and the right gestures. Make sure that you're using a variety of good body language, and that you're coordinating your body language with your voice, of course. Make sure that you are considerate of your rate, your loudness, pitch, and quality of your voice. Make sure that you're not being nasally, and that you're breathing right but not being too breathy, and that you're not being too harsh in the way that you say things. And make sure that you are articulating the words just properly to meet the expectations of people. We talked about being lockjawed, not opening your mouth wide enough, or being slack lips, not pronouncing the words properly with your lips, or speaking in a muffled tone. Pronunciation is so important. Make sure you're accentuating the right parts of the words according to your audience, because that's an important part of your communication. So also make sure that pronunciation of your message is coming across properly, and you can fix that by doing lots of rehearsals. Make sure that you are aware of the distance of you and the people that you're speaking of, and that you're giving the right message that's going to be received by those people. And of course, be aware of the time and nonverbals as it relates to culture. All right, I've given you a lot of information about delivering your speech. There's no substitute for practice. Create a speech that has your audience in mind, then practice it, and think about your nonverbals and your verbals as you present a speech that captures people's attention and helps people consider new actions to get instant results. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul